and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody, as we meander through our summer schedule of meetings, but not to make light of it, but we are meeting every week. We do have our work sessions full board on those Tuesdays that we are not meeting in open public session. So we're rolling along. There is work to do, and we have some work to do today, Dr. Brown.
Yes, we do.
And we're going to go ahead and do that. And I see a bit of a modification to the agenda.
One item to add to personnel report, if we could add that to the consent agenda. It's a supplemental dated today.
And it is the one page, and everyone should have opportunity to see that. I don't see anyone signed up to speak.
Right here.
Well, I see. It says, delegations can be staff and public.
It's been about 8 months now since there's been a representative of the Ithaca Journal. Hope springs eternal, but the papers might show up someday rather than just watch it on TV and report about it a week later.
We're not interesting unless we lose money. Throw money away. News.
I would dispute the 8 months. I haven't seen anyone here for a long time. Yeah. So anyway, let's since no one is here, and let's keep moving on to the consent agenda.
I'll move the consent as presented.
Second.
Second by Pat. Any items that we need to speak to?
It's pretty short.
All right. Everyone's had a chance to peruse it, and in your own way and time, and all in favor? That's everyone, and we are. A couple of folks are out of town, but I think the rest of us are here. If that makes sense, Dr. Brown.
Am I up?
Yeah, if it makes sense, Dr. Brown, that you're up, you are up.
Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Nancy. Just two quick things. The invitation's out for our convocation. It will be on September the 5th. We will kick things off at 8:30 a.m. We'll be getting more information about it, but I wanted to make sure we invite the board now. And we look forward to doing the State of the District address at that opportunity as well. And there'll be lunch served again. That's going to be co-sponsored by our various bargaining units, which was fun last year, and we're looking to do that again. The only other thing tonight, there's a couple of online publications that a lot of folks in our school district read. One is Trust Ed. Last week, they announced their digital dozen school districts in the nation. They see as leading the way as far as being innovative, and particularly innovative around communications and technology. And districts Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Charlotte, Mecklenburg, Wake County, some of our larger districts in the country have been recognized. And on that list also was the Ithaca City School District, which I was very proud of to see us named along with other districts who have 100,000+ young people, and communications departments, 40 and 50 folks, for our school district to be in that kind of company. So this is the season where we come and each one of our board meetings talk about some recognitions of our districts this evening, and this is the first of the 2017-2018 academic year. That's all I have tonight.
Excellent, Dr. Brown. We would perhaps hear about that in the papers, but we probably have to write a press release to make that happen. So it might not be a bad thing to do that. So we'll, what?
Just keep moving. So.
What?
Sean's focused on progress tonight.
I was just twinging my segue into really just an update on the work sessions. We did add in the list of the work sessions and those members that are focused on each of those work session topics, just in the agendas, just so everybody remembers where they're supposed to be when. There were a few meetings last week, and frankly, Brad, I think you're probably, if you want to just get a little update on summer work, et cetera.
Sure.
But I think the rest, there will be meetings next week, and chairs will have to be selected. still probably for policy and curriculum. But Brad, I believe you were selected as chair of the facilities.
And we met last week. Summer projects are at ICSD in Caroline, and they're underway, paving and some interior work, some door replacements and some things like that at both of the buildings. Those are underway. EPC finishing up hopefully this week at the stadium with the lights. They said to be done by the 12th, this being the 8th. It's approaching rapidly.
I don't see anything sticking up yet.
I haven't seen anything sticking up in the air, and I don't see a crane to lift anything up into the air right now, but
I'm checking every day.
hope springs eternal.
Nothing.
Hopefully it'll get done. Get everything ready for fall sports, because practices will begin shortly. We also had an update on the situation with water and lead. We're getting better news on testing as far as buildings that are coming back with none or only one source that's over the number, but we still need to address some issues. So there's going to be some work underway at Enfield and Caroline, sinks in the classrooms and piping behind that to be replaced. We're still waiting on the county health department as to some solutions having to do with drinking fountains, but we think we're going to be getting the go-ahead on those for some of the buildings shortly. So hopeful to see some progress in that regard over the course of the next few weeks and into the fall. And now we're believe it or not, it's been a decade now since the last large construction project bond issue here. And we're going to be taking a look, facilities will be taking a look at the building condition survey and seeing if there's work we should consider bringing forward to the voters in the next year or two to keep maintaining our slightly more than 1 million square feet of school space, which, as I point out, gets a day older every day.
And if I'm not, thanks Brad, if I'm not mistaken, a demographic survey was discussed, or facilities is going to pursue that and
take a look at the demographics as well. I mean, as we're aware, there's been quite a bit of construction in the community, and our school numbers are flat. We're not shrinking, but we're also not growing, which may seem counterintuitive to folks when they see apartments going up in various neighborhoods around the community. Our numbers have remained pretty consistent for, 7, 8 years now? I mean, very big, 20 or 30 a year, nothing. With 5,500 kids varying by 30 is not much. And it goes down, goes back up. So we've been a little surprised we haven't seen some increase. We had engaged some folks to take a look at the demographics, partially to see whether we have sufficient capacity in the elementary level, especially if we're able to continue increasing pre-K, which takes classroom space. What are we going to need in the way of classrooms in the next decade? Where do we need to be in the next 5 years? Where do we need to be in the next 10 years? So there's kind of two things there: population, just straight demographics, and then also to what degree might we be able to increase our pre-K. So looking at both of those things.
Exactly. Just for my own benefit, there is paving at LACS and Caroline. That will be completed,
They'll
correct?
be completed.
They're just not quite there yet.
Not there yet.
If folks are driving by and it's August and it's not done, but
They've
it's
done some drainage work
Right.
at both at this point. I'm not sure what day they've scheduled to actually pave, but they'll get both of those done before school starts.
Regarding the water, are we going ahead with replacements, or we're planning on it?
The sinks.
Right, the
at
sinks.
Caroline and Enfield. And that we're going to, and that includes piping back to a valve.
We're going to go ahead and do that.
We're going to go ahead and do that so that you'll have water in the classrooms. And then the drinking fountain piece, as I say, we're still waiting on an approval of the type of drinking fountain we'd like to use. So we're just waiting to hear from the county. Amanda thinks they're going to approve us for a pilot program to do that, so once they say it, I think we'll go ahead and let our custodial staff get to work on it. So some of that may extend into the fall. And I think, Amanda, we're also going to do the piping there too as well, right? We're going to go back from that.
As far as we can.
As far as we can get.
And there may be some electric work as well, depending on what type of water cooler units
right.
are necessary that we're replacing. Right, so.
And the sinks that are being replaced, are those just the ones that tested?
No, all of them.
All of them.
All of them and the piping, all of them. Just getting it done.
And thanks, Brad. And so we'll get updates on the other committees, but again, they're listed, and chairs need to be chosen, and but we'll move on. We're going to do a health insurance update, and then we'll move on to the farm to table and policy. And there's a policy, so we have some more work to do. So, Amanda,
We'll be very brief.
positive update.
It's very positive updates. So the last time I was before you, we were in the, what was considered to, or called the opt-out period. So just as a reminder to the public, we are now self-insured. We transferred all of our active employees, our active retirees that are under current contracts, our retirees under 65 and our retirees over 65 to self-funded insurance as of July 1. It means we're no longer with the TST BOCES consortium. The opt-out period referred to the time, which was about a month, where retirees that were over the age of 65 or Medicare eligible were evaluating an option that we would not have had if we were a member of the consortium, which was to offer a supplemental Plan F, Medicare Plan F, to retirees that are above the age of 65. And if they chose to opt out of that plan, which was underwritten by the Hartford, they essentially were saying that they would stay with the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan that the current active and retiree groups have, which is a standalone insurance. It doesn't work in conjunction with Medicare. It actually is, there's redundancy to Medicare. It doesn't take into account when Medicare sort of kicks in. We did a tremendous number of town hall sessions, we meaning Bob Van Kuren, myself, Kate Reed, the folks from E&V Insurance, which is our consulting firm. We did, I think, including tomorrow, we will have done, I think, 14 town hall sessions. Most of them, except for the one last week, were close to 3 hours in length. They had anywhere from over 100, close to, I think that first session was almost close to 150, somewhere in the range of 40. We never had less than 40 or 50 people in any room. Last week we only had one, because this is sort of catching folks that were turning 65 within this calendar year, to ensure that they knew that what was coming their way. So that opt-out period has been going on. There seemed to be initially some buzz of, or buzz of, this is our health insurance and you're taking it away. And once there was education and understanding that the coverage elements that they had under Blue Cross Blue Shield are covered by Medicare and then extended to the full 100% after the 80% of Medicare got kicked in, and they understood that it was a coverage point for coverage point, service point for service point, that their prescription plan would stay the same, would just be done differently under Medicare Part D versus a retiree drug subsidy, and that the district made 100% assurances that anything that we missed in that evaluation, that we would make them whole and ensure that they had coverage identical to what they had before under the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan. Once the word got out and retirees understood that messaging and understood really the essence of the coverage program, the retirees themselves started talking to one another. We were then merely there to answer questions. We probably received, I would say, I don't know if we did a count, but easily 170 phone calls in the business office regarding the just little incidental questions or things specific to me. We ended up at the deadline, which we gave, it was July 31st, and then we of course waited for anything postmarked July 31st to come in, so we waited till the end of that week. We received 64 opt-outs out of 775 Medicare eligible retirees. And so I think that was, exceptionally successful in the sense that the communication outreach was there. People felt like any fears that they had, which definitely any kind of talk about health insurance, especially in these times, it's emotional. They felt very good about the decision. Some people said, well, I'm trusting that this is going to be the right thing, and will you have feedback and communication, and we talked about it the last time, to evaluate this, and we will. We're working right now on the international coverage that will occur when retirees age 65 and above go abroad. That plan actually is a standalone plan. It will be trip specific. Retirees will call E&V Insurance and get an individual trip insurance plan to mimic what they had with Blue Cross Blue Shield before. The Hartford plan, it was not as good. That was the one element that we really felt needed to have sort of a support there. So we're working out the details on that. Kate Reed and I are working with the bargaining units around looking at active retirees, meaning those retirees that have retired under the current bargaining agreement that are 65 and above, and how we will treat those moving forward and those contracts. We'll be working also with local entities as well as probably state government entities to try to create a reserve account that's specific to health insurance, because we want to make sure that we have a safety net in that way if there are fluctuations in premium, so that it doesn't hit the employees and retirees. So right now we're on the move to move the 710 folks to the Hartford plan, maintain the coverage for the 64 that remain in Blue Cross Blue Shield, ensure that everything from the original transition has been moving forward properly, and getting out communication as best as we can to all units so that they know who to call when and understand their insurance coverage. So we have a health insurance advisory committee session. We have booked that for September 11th. I believe it starts at 4 o'clock. I know that Moira has already expressed a lot of interest in being a part of that. All board members are invited to attend. It's not so much a decision-making, action-making, but it's more of a processing data, looking at the plans, looking at the claims, bringing that forward then to Finance Committee. Finance Committee will then be the element that will then bring it to the Board of Education. So that's sort of, we're trying to ensure that there's the abilities to have communication about the self-insurance model and data analysis in a really thorough way at a committee level. And so again, September 11th at 4 p.m. and then the September Finance Committee will then look at the sort of that first meeting and whatever comes through on that meeting. We'll be very mindful of how the co-op is working as well, or the consortium, the TSD BOCES consortium. At some point in the near future, I imagine they will be having a subcommittee of their board, which will calculate how they will determine our share of the fund balance that remains. It's written in their municipal agreement that that will take place and that they will determine that sometime by November. So I have requested in public session there that I would like to be a part of that, and I've also sent a number of emails sort of nudging them to say that, again, just a reminder, please invite us. That should be an open session of their board, even though it's a committee of their board. So we'll keep you posted on that as well. Otherwise, we'll keep you posted here and there, and we'll consider this to be part of Finance Committee as well as Budget Development, because this is the largest item, except for staffing, in our budget.
You can go ahead. Of the 64 individuals who decided to opt out, I know we've heard a lot of them. It just made sense because they had never paid a dime. I'm wondering if some of those folks are the folks who called in that 170 phone calls so we could talk to them about
Yeah.
their options.
Yeah, a lot of them, some we did not ask us for our opinions. They sort of were kind of on, they were just sort of steadfast in their belief that the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, was the plan that they wanted to have. You are absolutely accurate. There are very few of those 64. I want to say there's maybe at most 7 people that actually pay a portion of the premium. Almost all of them pay nothing for their premium. I know for a fact that there were a number of retirees that we met with actually a number of times, up to the last day, sort of deciding, trying to make their decision what was going to work best for them. Some said, and this was communicated in the public session, so this is, no secret. They said, it would have been, we actually would have felt better if you would have just enrolled us and then given us the opt-out after a year of trying it. And so that was in a different way of thinking. Some people, one person I know in particular was an international traveler, and that was the reason. That they just didn't feel like being bothered with calling E&B every single time that they wanted to go on a trip. I'm thinking, were there any other reasons? I think that those were really, that captured it all.
Name brand.
Name brand. There was a real, the Hartford, I know they do auto. I never heard that they do health. How many years have they been doing this? Everywhere we go, Excel is Blue Cross Blue Shield is accepted. And so when we tried to explain about the coverage really makes up, it doesn't matter who the name brand is or who's the sponsor or underwriter, that it's the coverage that matters. That just, it didn't translate sometimes. So, those were really the reasons that we heard.
Any other comments? And
Just thank you for doing all that. That was a big project.
It's huge. Yeah.
Very intense. So I think it's great to see that it transferred as well as it did. So
We've gotten a lot of wonderful connections with the retirees, informative on just the process, informative on how we communicate with them, informative on how they feel they've been treated by the district. They give back to the district, and if they're taxpayers or not, it's been really a wonderful process. So, I think through this evaluation, I know that the Hartford will open the window again at some point in the future for the remaining retirees, and I think that that's something that we'll have to talk about moving forward as to how we want to utilize that.
to that point, Amanda, some of the feedback that I believe you mentioned before was that this was the first time they've heard from many retirees, first time they've heard from the district really
That's right.
in years.
That's right.
And so really there was a lack of connection, or
That's right.
they were retired and doing
That's right.
all the wonderful things that they're able to do.
They get a letter asking, are you sort of still alive? Because we
Right.
want to
Every
know
once
if
in a
you are
while,
in the
right.
TRS, ERS, and
Right.
health insurance. And also their rates. Here are your rates for your health insurance. And pretty much other than that, they don't hear from us. So it's, I think, as I
So I
said in the last
believe-
meeting, we have a
right.
lot of opportunity there.
Right, so I believe
Yeah.
there may be an initiative to maintain a connection, not just about your health insurance, but what's going on in the district and
Are we
Right.
adding some of these folks to the Insider?
Yeah, we're gonna and cater the insider to have a column, standing column just for retirees.
Oh, great.
In our next mailing that is health insurance related, we will have an opportunity there to give us information as to how they want to be contacted, their preferential way. So is it by, mail? Is it by email? And so those will then be given to Dr. Brown, the communications director. So we're gonna utilize that mailing to gather that information as feedback.
excellent. So I know some folks are going to be working on, meeting with Barbara Lifton perhaps, and looking for that sponsorship for that specific legislation for this district to create a reserve.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So
Yeah,
now-
and Kate Reed has been really, wonderful about helping us move that forward, so.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Amanda. Anything else?
just
Go
at that
ahead.
point, we're meeting with Barbara Lifton's office this week.
Right. Well, okay. Well, there you go. Excellent. E, yes?
Our fearless leader for legislative action, would you like to summarize our meeting with Congressman Reed?
Yes, we did. Eldred, Brad, and I went to a NISBA-sponsored meeting at Congressman Reed's office, And although Councilman Reed was not there, we did talk to his chief of staff. And we also were there with other school board members from his district. So
Sure.
that was actually pretty interesting, but it wasn't a big room, so it wasn't a ton of people. One of the purposes in going was to make them aware that some of the policies and threatened cuts to education funding, to Medicaid funding, to Title I and Title II funding that are all at risk, that behind those particular cuts and ideas of cutting are real people and real kids. So that was something that we were hoping to impress upon them, and we'll be following that up at least with giving them, they were interested, the person that was there, Allison, who was the chief of staff, was interested in hearing more about our programs and more about our school, and it seemed like an opportunity to kind of educate them a little bit on what takes place here. So,
Absolutely.
I don't know, did you have anything you want to add to that, or?
Yep, thanks, Ann. And so let's move on to farm to table grants.
Positive federal funding.
Oh, certainly should.
Daphne is here.
I want to make sure they introduce that into the board or something like that.
Okay. So I have the pleasure to talk to you about the Farm to Table grant that our district received for 5 years at $212,000 a year. It is very exciting. Our program director is Lori Patterson. She had a family emergency, so she couldn't be here, but she took 99% of the pictures and has developed this program. So when I say that we've done something, she's done it. She has been the quintessential director for me in that I don't have to do anything. I go and I watch and I meet with her, but she has just taken this on. Her leadership ability is phenomenal. So it's called a 21st Century Community Learning Center grant. It's the only federally funded grant that is funding for programs outside of the school day. So this is specifically for after school and summer programming. So the specifics of the grant, and you can go to the next picture just because there's so many great pictures. We have a 4-week summer program that's 5 days a week, 7:40 to 11:15 a.m. And then also 10 weeks of after-school programming in the fall, and that's filling a gap. And I think that's one of the reasons we got the grant, is it's not just adding on to after-school programming that we already have. Our after-school programming in elementary schools doesn't start till late fall, and this starts up again after their 4th week here in the summer. The very first week of school, 2 days a week after school, they're going to be going out to farms, being a part of the harvest, going to the farmer's market, seeing the harvest, having a harvest celebration. So we felt it was really important that they see the whole process, because in upstate New York, there is produce, but there's a lot more in the fall. So the program is also the grant is focused on Title I schools. So it is at BJM, Enfield, Cayuga Heights, and Bell Sherman. This year, it's not technically at Bell Sherman because we're painting it. And so the Bell Sherman kids and teachers are at Cayuga Heights. So we have 2 in 1 building. So technically, the grant is for 30 students per site, but did you give that? Yeah, we have a little handout there. And the handout is on the top. I did copied the press release, which was really well written. I didn't write it. And so I just copied that there. You'll see that on this, the enrollment is much lower than 30. And this is because we got notification that we got the grant literally 4 days before the kids went home for the summer. So our ability to contact families and then have families that hadn't made summer plans, or like hadn't paid the down payment for summer camp or summer daycare, was very low. So we have about half the kids that we could have. I have to say, for us, it's a little bit of a blessing in disguise because we get to try this out and figure out how do we have all the kids cook omelets in the morning and then write about it with half the amount of kids we're gonna have next summer. So the teachers are sort of saying, whew, we got a year to figure this all out. Because every morning kids are making their breakfast, they are helping to make their oatmeal or omelets with fresh vegetables in it. They're journaling on that, they're considering what that means about nutrition, all those pieces. So while we don't have a lot of kids, it's very impactful for the kids that are there. Also, this is a program that is just for rising second and third graders. So these are children that just finished first grade or second grade, and this fall they'll be in second and third. And we did this because last year the Park Foundation funded the Caroline Wilderness Academy. And when I worked with Mary Grover at Caroline to analyze the reading data from that program, she had kids from many grade levels, we saw that most consistently the rising second and third graders either maintained or improved their reading levels as a result, well, we hope, as a result of that program. Other kids saw a little bit of growth or some maintenance, but that's where it was strongest. So when we wrote this grant, we used that data that was really funded by Park Foundation to say this is why we're focusing on these children. Additionally, to the grade levels and the title schools, we also focused on students that traditionally had not been successful at our long-running AIS summer school, which is a traditional sort of remediation for kids that have been successful in reading. We found that students that didn't have great attendance and had attendance issues during the school year, that carried over into AIS. They were not coming to summer school. We felt that this would be a much more engaging program for kids, and it is borne out, not surprisingly. Our attendance is through the roof. We have kids that this past Friday we were up in Enfield, and the kids were saying, "Are we done?" And the teachers were like, "Well, just for this week. Like, can't we come back tomorrow?" Because they were outside. They were, well, you'll see pictures. They're doing earthworms, and they're figuring out what kind of dirt is best, and journaling and graphing that. So it's real world work for them.
A couple of questions don't see answered here. The program that starts in the fall begins September 6th and runs how long?
It runs for 10 weeks.
10 weeks.
Yeah, twice a week. And we haven't decided on the days because we want to coordinate the busing so that all the groups can get to the youth farm, to Sticks and Stones farm, to the farmer's market.
That was my next question. I know in addition to quality programming, that time gap between school and after school disqualifies a lot of the kids we want to participate in something like this. So it sounds like it's going to be a handoff.
Yep.
School ends and they're on a bus.
Yeah, and the beauty of this is also the classroom teachers that have been working this summer are the same classroom teachers that are working this fall. So those kids already know those teachers. So many of them will be their teachers, their second and third grade teachers. They'll walk down the hall there or stay in their classroom. Also, the aides that are a part of this program are also, we hired them throughout the whole program. So in the fall, they know all the adults, it's nothing new. These kids are just they get to come back. And, at every school except Bell Sherman, there is actually some form of a working garden that they need to get back to. So it's pretty exciting for the kids.
And how are the kids getting there in the summer?
In the summer, part of the grant is there's busing.
Oh,
Each of the children are bused to their site. And in terms of fast turnarounds, Liz Berner at Transportation, we could not tell her who the kids were until fairly late, and she got those kids on buses and to the schools on time on the first day. So really a big shout out to her and the bus drivers, because it was, all over, for the summertime. And that's new for us. We've had summer programming, but it's always been at one building. But we're sending kids all over. As I'm giving praise to folks, then Denise Agati has also had to add 3 sites to her food service. And she does food service all over the county in the summer through the federal funding for that. So she's also been working with the teachers on having healthy food there that the kids can cook, which is different than bringing them cereal and milk, which is generally what they get in the summer. Nothing wrong, USDA says that's healthy, but bringing fresh eggs and getting them to each school before 7:40,
And you're cooking in the classroom.
The kids are cooking in the classroom. Now,
Right, they're not going down to each kitchen in the elementary school. They're actually cooking right in their classroom.
And that's one thing where we're actually very happy we have 13 to 15 kids in the program, because what we realized is, there's I knew this but didn't think about it, there's all sorts of regulations for food and health safety, food safety.
Gee, yeah.
All those things that we were all like, oh, the kids will cook, it'll be great. Well, you have to wash the dishes at a certain temperature, you
Hopefully they
have
have
to
to wash
keep
their
the food
hands.
cold, yeah. So all that, part of our planning for this year, because we have some money because we didn't have as many kids, we're going to have some training so that people can be food service certified, because with 30 kids, we're probably going to need to use an industrial size kitchen, but we're going to have people that are trained, so that they can help with that.
How are they cooking those eggs in the classroom?
They have hot plates, and we did get that checked out, and all the inspectors came and said that's okay, and we keep them cold until they put them in. But again, such a learning process for Lori and I. We were like, oh yeah, all that.
Maybe it's something to invite the board if you wish to see it. Rob had a chance to visit with us on Friday, but if any of you wish to walk, it'd be great.
It's still ongoing through.
This is the last week of the 4 weeks this summer. So you have the rest of the week from 7:40 to 11:15. What you might want to do is just shoot me an email, because each program goes on a field trip every week. So, some people were at the youth farm today, some people were at a different farm today, some people were over at, I believe, Cornell Cooperative Extension doing things on earthworms today. So that was part of the funding, is that kids are going out for field experiences every week.
I would highly recommend it. Taking a little bit of time.
Yeah, it's
Right,
really great.
opportunity
Just
last
walking
Friday.
in the
Yeah.
classrooms, the kids are so engaged.
It's okay to say the federal government's emphasis on sugar-laden cereals is probably not the best thing for children. Nutrition.
That and chocolate milk, a little concerned. So we're happy that we're doing that. So,
That sounds be shocked.
so we had, my piece went away there, it'll come back. So on the handout that you got, you see the 5 target questions, and I'm just gonna quickly run through them, because we're really working across the next 5 years on building children that are agents of their own learning. So you'll just see here that kids decided they need to consider the amount of compost that they produce each day. So they weighed it, they talked about how can we get it down, and you can see there on 8.4, it had gone down to 2 pounds in that program. So they had discussions on, well, how did we do that? What did we do? And so, they take purposeful initiative, which is being an agent of your own learning, and they're working to seek, meaning and purpose in what they're doing. So they're generating their own questions about earthworms, because they're creating a community garden at Enfield, and they're creating compost for that. And so, was the compost useful for earthworms? And then, they ask these questions: can they sense moisture? Do earthworms have a sense of smell? Can an earthworm sense light? And you'll see over there, this was blowing in the wind, so there's actually a little action in that last one. They're journals that they are graphing things and taking notes on the parts of the earthworm and what they like best and what their questions are for the next part of the work that they're doing. So they're generating their own questions, they're taking notes, they're going to the youth farm, which we have contracted with for regular field experiences there. The youth farm is unique in that it has Tompkins County youth there, teens that are really running the farm. So their peers, a little bit older peers, maybe older siblings, maybe folks that live in their neighborhood, are helping them in their field experience at the youth farm. So that's a really important project that we have with them. We're also partnering with Cornell Cooperative Extension, their master gardeners and their gardening educators, to talk about soil, composting, working on soil cultivation and seeds and planting for each of their programs. The other guiding question is how can we capitalize on literacy instruction through a case study approach. So you're seeing kids writing about the food that they have, and this child over here, that's what they wrote on the front of their journal. This is what I think Farm to Table is about. And so in there, they've been taking notes and building their knowledge of that. Teachers were amazing and found, it's easy to find books on farming, but also on different aspects of farming and different cultures of farming. I'm going to go to the next one. This is a brainstorming, again, that Enfield did on building a community garden. This speaks to the student agency in that they're making the questions themselves, and the case study approach, which is developing something that's real and meaningful and useful to their community. And then also in here you can see there's a couple questions, and down on the bottom there it says, who should share the garden? As a member of the community, how will you enjoy the garden? How can you help us? And that those questions are towards the adults in these children's lives. And so how can we have authentic, powerful family engagement in this? Part of this grant is funding for a family liaison. Her job is to work with families to see how they can help this program and also what they're interested in learning. But really starting with listening and what do the families have to offer to these children, because that wealth of knowledge and perspective is what we really need to have from the families. Go ahead, next one. Another part is developing food literacy. BJM's case study is focusing on the question, what is a nutritious meal? And part of what they're doing, you'll see that what fruit do you not like? What is your favorite fruit? Every day they do food tastings, and in some of the programs they've developed something really with the kids, and the kids decided to call it No Thank You Bites. So it's before you say no thank you, you have to take 3 bites. And, so you gotta give it a try. And they have found...
3? Sorry. Well, 3?
Well, I saw kids with snap peas on Friday, and they're not so sure. And then this one little guy who knew he loved them broke it open and said, just try the pea on the inside. You'll like it. And the kids were like, ah. So they figured out ways to get their 3 bites. And then they were asking for more, so it was fabulous. And then the next big question that we're working on is how do we build our cultural responsiveness, both as teachers that are supporting students and as students. So how do we look at different perspectives on what is a nutritious meal? What do we use a community garden for? So you'll see this is a reference text really for the adults, but as an anchor text, the how to eat is a perspective on food. And they also read a children's book called Everybody Cooks Rice. And it's just talking about how different cultures use rice as a staple in their food meals. Bell Sherman is focusing on the question, what is good food? And they really are expanding that. What's good food to me? What's good food to others? And how do I understand that and see food and food literacy and food justice from different people's perspectives? So that has been an important piece. The next slide, you can see this is just a bunch of kids that are out on the farm, and they have harvested that food. We have some wonderful young adults that work in our district, so the grown people all work in our district, they're from all different parts of our community that have come to work with our kids. So those 5 guiding questions about student agency, food literacy instruction, family engagement, food literacy, and cultural responsiveness, they're really at the heart of each of the school's case studies. And they're going to be documented on the district website, which is starting with this page. So we don't have a lot there, but you can see their guiding questions for each of their case studies. And we're going to be adding both the curriculum and pictures and results and videos to this page so that we can share that with families and with other people that might be interested. So that is the Farm to Table program so far.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the Bell Sherman questions, like what is good food for me, what is good food for my body? And I'm thinking as the kids answer these questions, like how are the adults in the room like reconciling those things? Because I can think of like maybe white rice. A lot of people say white rice isn't good for you, but I'm sure there are many people from different cultures that eat a lot of white rice, and then they go home and they're like, well, my teacher said, you know, a lot of white rice isn't good for me, and then we go back to that cultural thing. So I'm just wondering like how.
Well, I'm glad you brought up rice, because that is why we did the book Everybody Cooks Rice. And so how do we look at different perspectives, and then also how do we bring in some data in that? So like, you know, there are studies that show that a certain kind of rice is better for you or not better for you. And so part of what that has launched is looking at data. So how do we help second and third graders look at reports and be critical consumers of information, and, you know, make those kinds of decisions on their own? Because again, the teachers are not saying white rice is bad for you. It's let's look at different perspectives, let's look at different pieces of data, and you become an agent for your own learning and your own understanding. And so this is a very different perspective. In some other reading that I've been doing on brain research is that we're trying to move children away from being dependent learners, where we're feeding them the answer, feeding them what is the right way, to independent learners where they have to make some decisions on their own. And it's a struggle for some kids that have been trained by us to be like, tell me the answer. And we're saying, what do you think? And these children are really just growing from it, you know, every day. They're like, wow, I can choose? Well, let's look at the data, let's think. So, yeah.
Lydia, I have to say, on a beautiful Friday, August, it was August, right? Beautiful Friday, August morning, I saw a very engaged group at DJM. I mean, so it was just, they were involved, they were educated, engaged, and certainly educating themselves, and hands-on, and just totally immersed in what they were doing.
Yeah, we couldn't interrupt them, so it was, I think, 6 of us, 6 adults came in the room.
Lumbered around, right?
Yeah, we sort of hovered over them. They were way too busy for us. And then they came over to another group. You know, the teachers are also excellent in engaging the students. And,
exactly.
you know, they came over and started working on another piece of their work of building a nutritious meal.
There was carbohydrates and proteins flying around. It was just
And we're also seeing some outstanding examples. We're going to be talking a lot about inclusion, and a big part of that is co-teaching and how we do that.
Right.
And I saw some of the best examples of co-teaching I'd ever seen. It was obvious that folks had planned together, they had the time to plan,
Right.
They knew what they wanted to get accomplished, and they had relationships built with one another and the young people. It was just a seamless approach that worked well. And you couldn't tell who had special needs in that, because every young person was, their needs were getting met.
And you also couldn't tell who the aides were, who the classroom teachers were, who the parent volunteers were in any of those rooms. So the adults were all working together.
So when you say parent volunteers, how does that work?
So our family liaison is working to bring families in, family members in when they can. And the beauty of having a family liaison here is they can prep them for that. And they can say, so today we're going to be working on earthworms. And so, you know, are you okay with getting your hands dirty? Well, this one isn't. So they're going to actually do the cleanup part of it. So, you know, it's very well coordinated between Lori and Val Coward, who is our family liaison. So she goes from school to school and sets up time. So she is literally the liaison.
So how much involvement with parents have you actually had?
Well, never as much as we want. Part of it is, you know, the amount of time we had beforehand. So we have a steady group of usually moms that are coming in, either volunteering to sort of prep. Some are presenting. It was a volunteer mom who presented on earthworms the other day. Part of the grant is a parent advisory council, and we will be meeting with them 4 times a year. And as people enrolled, they said if they were interested in that, and we had over 60% of our families say they were interested in being on an advisory council. So we made it clear, this isn't just 4 weeks and you're done. This is a program, and if you're a second grader, we're gonna ask you to come back next year, to be in it, so.
You foresee no issues getting to your 30 for,
Oh, no,
I mean, you're
no,
gonna
I
be-
see no issues because.
unfortunately, you're probably going to have a lot of kids who would like to do it that aren't going to be able
Yeah,
to.
yeah, because the kids, all the second and third graders are gonna see their friends going off 2 days a week this fall. And then coming in with produce and talking about their field experiences. I mean, they're gonna be our best advertisements for it, so, yeah, we're gonna have to turn people away.
Is the liaison going through the school year?
Yes, yep,
Outstanding.
it's great,
There's tremendous opportunity for me to just get a glimpse of
yeah.
what our classrooms look like in this district as opposed to probably what they look like in districts all across the state.
Yeah.
It's a microcosm of, the shifts in the district. It was outstanding.
Well,
That's great.
thank you, it's been a lot of work, but beautiful work, so, thank you.
Thanks. So it was a wise use of a few hours on a morning that I didn't go to work, but that's okay. I made it up, I guess. Sean, we have a policy.
We do, but before I move it, I'm going to suggest a change and then move, hopefully, the change. We have to go through that. And I was trying to work with Jennifer beforehand, and I did not make the policy meeting because of this great thing, so my apologies. And I know my other fearless compatriot, Pat, had a bout with poison ivy, and so we've been maimed at the policy committee.
But we persevere.
But we persevere. Moira soldiered on by herself.
Definitely.
Though couldn't be here
On
today.
fire.
So there are two changes that you currently see in the policy. One, it should be highlighted, we have changed, let me back up real quick. This is for Denise Agati and the food service folks. I'm trying to figure out how best to write a policy that allows us to recoup money when students go below their balance. Part of that conversation was us having a conversation about student privacy and about being culturally competent. And for example, in years prior, unfortunately, we have identified and addressed students' negative balance with students in line in front of other students. This policy says that we will never, under any circumstance, address a student's balance with a student, but rather we will discreetly and confidentially either contact the parent the way in which they choose to be called. And that's usually, I understand it, either by robocall or by letter. Right, or sometimes there may be a physical call. That's what this says. It also says that at this point in time, before the parents got a phone call when the balance hit $5. As I understand it, Denise said $5 is actually like 10 lunches, something similar to that. That's 2 weeks. Maybe that's a little early, so now it says actually 0. When it hits 0, parents will get a phone call. I did ask what was the loss to the district last year. Are we talking $80,000? Are we talking? And it was under 3, if I'm not mistaken.
It's minimal.
Right. So, and the other
Once
thing.
people are reminded, they usually make it.
They usually, right. So the one change I would like to make is just take the sentence out because it just seems to be punitive for no reason. It's if you will move up for me, Jennifer, real quick. My apologies, so everyone can see it. It's the second paragraph, the first full sentence. It says, however, unpaid charges place a financial burden on our schools. I understand the purpose of that sentence. It just doesn't seem like it's necessary. The actual purpose of the policy is in the next sentence. I figured I would just like to lead with the affirmative as opposed to the negative. I don't know if anyone has any objection to that. And with that, with other changes, then I would move policy 8505 with that deletion, if we're all okay with that.
Second that.
Just a question. In terms of like if the child is in line and the lunch man lady sees that the student has a negative balance, are they then just going to allow the child to like continue to charge since they're not going to say anything?
Yes and no. You are not allowed to continue to charge a regular lunch in terms of the entire line. You are allowed to charge an FDA-approved lunch, right? So, but the additional snacks, whatever else, sodas, those things are not able to be charged to the account once it hits 0. You can get we are not going to deny any child lunch. That part we clarified. But beyond that, is my understanding, and please, if someone knows anything different,
Additional ice cream.
but right, the ice
The a la
creams,
carte items.
the a la carte items are not
Charge.
with a negative balance. Those are not to be allowed to be purchased.
But we're not going to, so we're going to take those items off their tray? Is that
Well,
what?
that's an excellent question.
So
Because that
isn't,
lets everyone else in
isn't-
line
I
know
know, that would feel
that
really bad.
I'm sorry you can't have that.
you can't have ice cream.
We
Give
can
me that
have,
grape juice and that now.
Yeah.
I would think,
This is more of an implementation conversation that we can,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's detailed
we
work.
won't be asking kids to put stuff back. And let us work through what that looks like.
There's no a la carte amendment.
And this is more of a level of high school,
But
maybe just a high school thing. And we can work with Denise and her team about how we handle that, and maybe come back to you with how it's going to be implemented.
Yeah, I agree. That's something I would prefer not to put in policy and let that be part of the interpretation of the.
Okay, I don't know if this came up in your analysis, I'm just curious, are there any kids who, after being reminded, well, not kids, are there any families who, after being reminded, actually don't get the child back up to?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And there are a couple families, and as I understand it, that money I was talking about is primarily responsible by a couple of, it's not like a whole host of folks. And my quick conversation with one of our own children was that we were neglectful for a week or so. Like, she reminded us that we didn't do our own duty. So I can see that would happen for other families as well. So trying to figure out how that takes place. Maya Malcolm told me a nice experience as well, but since Chris isn't here to defend himself, I'm gonna let that one slide. We'll let that go.
It's a manager Wagner's here.
That's right. That's right.
They call me every day for a month over 10 cents.
So what we can do, Eldred, is that we can ask Denise to come back, because we did have a number of spirited conversations about this policy and about what's taking place, to come back, just give us an update about what's been happening and thinking about how we'll implement it in that regard that Doc was talking about. So if you want to follow up again, a month or two.
You have to say that out loud.
and we certainly can pass the policy with the adjustment, but we certainly, as a board, and certainly I think as a district, want to make it known that students should not be addressed regarding their bill and why.
That will no longer happen.
Right, our policy needs to be followed up by the everyday procedure within the lunch line, right? So that's, I'm looking at administrators.
Yeah, we will
Right.
be sharing this with you.
Okay. So, other questions? We moved an amendment, or do we move the policy with the
I move the
amendment?
policy with the amendment.
So we can just vote once? And this is first?
First reading.
Just first reading? Do we need to move it? We're good with the first, we don't need
We do
to?
need to vote. We do vote for first readings.
No, I mean we don't need to expedite this. Okay, all right. All in favor? That's everyone. Thanks. And we'll bring it back for a second reading when you all are ready. We're moving quickly to wrapping up, so everybody can go do August things instead of being in a meeting. Upcoming dates, August graduation?
Yes, next Friday, correct?
Week from Friday.
Week of Friday, yeah. Week from Friday.
Right, I didn't see it on the upcoming dates, so
It's in your Google Calendar.
We'll send out another.
just
I sent out a Google Calendar invite.
Yeah.
time and place, just for folks that can make it. Not sure I can make it, but we'll
Yeah, we'll send it out
go.
again.
Friday the 18th.
Black Box
6
Theater.
p.m. in the Black
6 o'clock.
Box Theater.
Okay, all right.
Sometimes. It'll be nice cohorts.
Do we know how many?
Not sure yet.
We'll know in a week. A week or so, 10 days. Work session's coming up next week, and then we meet again at the end of the month, correct, Dr. Brown?
Yes, sir.
And so and that's 22nd, and we're talking board development, Dr. Brown, the 29th.
Yeah.
All sorts of fun stuff in August. And then kids come back, right?
Off the school year.
Okay, all right. Anything else by anyone? Anyone at all?
One quick thing.
Oh,
I don't know if
thank you,
all
Dr.
board, and I hate to do this now. Daphne Shalulu is in the audience, and as most of you may know, Daphne's our new math educator, coming from Caroline Elementary, and I have been bragging about her for weeks now. But an outstanding educator, moving from teacher to being an administrator in the school district, and worked much on the farm to table program too, the planning and prep.
Great.
Welcome,
Nice.
Daphne.
Nice
Perfect.
to be here. I'm honored and excited.
Yeah,
Excellent.
that's all.
So you almost forgot to mention that. I was
I couldn't see her. The chair was blocking.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Anything else for the good of the group, and so we can let Sean go home? Are we good? Without objection, we are adjourned until next week.
Your shoulder feels better?
No, I appreciate it, thank you. Hope I'll be in surgery.